Sir, it's 2.15 hours.
हाँ जी,
2 घंटे 15 मिनट, 8:15 तक सर खत्म कर दीजिए.
Okay. Oh, such a long time.
Maximum, बस.
Okay. No, I shall be finishing little earlier than that. Because I thought that the lecture will be, I will proceed like this, Professor Kushal, that for an hour or so, I shall be, maybe 1 hour and 50 minutes, I shall be giving the presentations, and then we can have the interaction with the participants. Will that be all right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So thank you very much, everybody. Let me share my screen with you. Can you see the slide, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, no problem. So the topic that has been allotted to me is the agricultural development and environmental issues, the experience of Punjab state. I will basically be speaking upon the experience that we have in the state of Punjab as far as the agricultural situation is concerned. And also I shall be sharing with you, the policies that we have been adopting from time to time and the objective with which the agricultural development has proceeded. So before I go to the slides, I would like to tell you the brief agricultural development history of Punjab vis-a-vis the rest of the country. And that is, as we know that the Green Revolution or the new agricultural strategy was adopted with a specific objective, and Punjab was given a special responsibility. When I refer to Punjab, kindly keep in mind that I am referring to Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh, where just in 1968, in 1966, the Punjab was divided into the 3 states, Punjab, Haryana, and Himachal. Prior to that, Punjab was a single state. These states, they have the common economic history. They have the common, economic development issues which they have been facing over a period of time. So if we look at the combined Punjab, even if we go back prior to 1947, when the country was divided into 2 parts, we find that agriculture has always, occupied the central role in the economic development process. Or, and then, when, after Maharaja Ranjit Singh's rule, which extended from Peshawar to Kashmir and then beyond Delhi, it was a very vast state. And even at that time, predominantly, the Punjab's preoccupation was with agriculture. The main occupational structure of this part of region was agriculture. And even when the British, somewhere around 1750, they acquired Punjab from Maharaja Ranjit Singh, they continued they realized the potential of this whole of northern India, because it was well irrigated and it had potential for agricultural development, and also it had used to produce many crops which British exported to the rest of the world from this region. This fact, in fact, has not been covered in even in the colonial, debates when we refer to the colonial exploitation of India. Very little reference sometimes is given to this particular aspect. So the British also, concentrated on the canal and the irrigation development of Punjab. And there were very large number of people from this region. It was not only Punjabis, it was, Punjab did not have only Punjabi as one of the languages. It had Urdu, it had Hindi, it had, a few local dialects also. And as a consequence, what we find is that Punjab was, in effect, the consolidated Punjab was a nation in itself. That is, and there was a huge resistance. And this region was also educationally quite literate in terms of, the basic numeracy, the basic literacy. The Punjab already had, that level before the British came to acquire Punjab as such. So Punjab always was an agricultural state, and the main occupation, of course, of the people were even in the trade. This was the agricultural dependent trade. And what we find is that the British, to some extent, they continued, but they suppressed their language, they suppressed their culture, they brought Christianity in a very major way. The local dialect, local languages suffered very significantly because English was adopted as a major language of communication. So we find that even though the British showed some interest in the development of Punjab, their primary interest was to recruit the people from this Punjab region for their armed forces, and which we find that subsequently they used in the World War I and World War II also. Very large number of contingents, the Sikh regiments and the Jat regiments, they have the origins from the British Army, and they were recruited here. So, Punjab, what I'm trying to tell you is that the agricultural development was not in isolation. It was, in fact, it was a continuous process, and it was well integrated into the rest of our socio-cultural environment. So we should see Punjab in this background. And after partition, but the agriculture suffered during the British. They did not look into the complete food security issues of Punjab agriculture. And starvation, we find that the Bengal famine and others, issues and periodic droughts and the excessive rains, there was no proper embankment of these rivers, and quite often the crops they got destroyed. So, their main investment was in West Pakistan, was in West Punjab, which is now part of Pakistan, especially the River Sindh, Ravi, and some parts of, the other rivulets which were prevalent in that particular part. Now, after 1947, and when the systematic economic development process was undertaken by the government of India, we find that at that time, both the death rates and the birth rates were quite high. And additions to the population, as net additions to the population, if you look at the growth rate of population at the time of independence, it was quite moderate. But after independence, when the medical facilities, health improved, population started expanding, and as a consequence, we find that there were huge jumps in the population. The population figure increased, the count on population, because of the high birth rate and perhaps slightly reduced birth rate, the net additions to the population were hugely. And as a result, at that time, if India was no different from Africa or Latin America or the rest of the South Asia. But our policy planners, they realized the potential that this region has in terms of the agricultural production. And therefore, the first plan itself realized that it has to be agricultural intensive plan. And more or less, in the first plan, we find that in this part of the country, Punjab, Delhi, Haryana, even parts of Himachal Pradesh, the main objective was to rehabilitate the population which came to this part of our country after the partition. So they were basically, they migrated from the West Pakistan, from West Punjab, and they came to this part of our country. And we find that the major source of settlement was the rural areas and the agricultural fields. So they were resettled there. And as I said, that after, the systematic planning was adopted, the population started increasing at a faster rate. There were huge issues of food security. Food shortage was felt from the second plan itself. We find that the food shortage was felt. And in the third plan, the situation became much worse. And what we find is that, when the third plan was completed, there were no 5 years plans. For 3 years, there were only annual plans. And we had to discontinue that process of planning. And it was perhaps in 1966-67 or 67-68 that, the fourth 5-year plan was adopted, in which the new agricultural strategy, which we call as the Green Revolution, was adopted on a systematic basis. And what was the reason, what was the justification of this was that, Pandit Nehru was the Prime Minister, and the whole of our planning body was quite concerned that we need to meet the food shortages on a massive scale. And the agricultural systematic development was undertaken. And what we find is that during that time, Nehru, on the one side, had very strong relations with the Russian Federation. At that time, perhaps it was South Soviet Union. And subsequently, we find that we also had very close relations as far as agriculture is concerned with the Americans. And the Americans, especially, they also had vested interest that these countries, South Asia, Africa, Latin America, their prime concern was that the food shortage should be met. Otherwise, they may go for some sort of communist movement, they may go for a socialist movement, and the capitalist movement will suffer. So what we find is that, the Mexican varieties or high-yielding varieties, as we call them, the Borlec varieties were adopted, and they proved quite successful. Not that India did not have the local varieties. We had very water-resistant crops, and our cropping pattern was also very diversified. But given the food shortage at the time of, during the 60s, in order to meet that, it was thought that we must go for intensive agriculture, where we should identify the areas where intensive use of technology can be adopted. And those areas were obviously the areas where irrigation was possible. And Punjab had 5 rivers, and all rivers were flowing. Even after independence, we find that Punjab and Haryana, even now they are almost 98% irrigated. So the huge potential in Western Uttar Pradesh, Haryana and Punjab was realized. In addition to this, we find that many other districts in the rest of the nation, in the rest of the states were also found. For instance, in Tamil Nadu, in Maharashtra, the sugarcane production. In Andhra Pradesh, the coastal belts where canal irrigation was available. These areas were identified for intensive adoption of agricultural technology. And in this endeavor, we find that, at this time, what we find is that, if you look at the experience of Punjab, for instance, before going into the details of the Green Revolution, I just want to share with you, some of the statistics of Punjab, that why Punjab is now has assumed the position of the great, that is the food ball of India. Almost 82% of if you look at the area of Punjab, 82% of the total available area of Punjab is devoted to the agricultural cultivation. So 82% of the total area of Punjab is cultivable. And the cropping pattern, the cropping intensity, that is, cropping intensity means how many crops do we grow per unit of land. We find that it is 189. That means almost 190, which is very close to double cropping. And we find that in 2016-17, these are the figures which I'm sharing with you. These pertain to the year 2016 and 17, which are available in this statistical abstract of Punjab, which is official publication of the government of Punjab. That the net sown area means the total the net cultivable area which is available for agriculture is 4,145,000 hectares. That is close to 41.4 million hectares is the area which is available for agriculture. And if we double it, if we let us presume that instead of it is, in fact, the cropping intensity has gone beyond 190, it is very close to 193. So even it is, let us presume that it is slightly less than that, we find that close to 80 million hectares is the gross crop area in Punjab. So you can see that how much Punjab is dependent on agriculture and how much intensive cultivation is taking place in agriculture. And we find that, of the total in Punjab, we find that 99% of the area out of 100, if we look at the net sown area, 41.4 millions, 99% of this is completely irrigated. It is receiving irrigation either from the surface water resources like canals and maybe some sort of dams, or also from the groundwater. These are the two main sources of irrigation in northern India, especially the Green Revolution areas of northern India, Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh. We find that 99% of this area is irrigated. And 27%, especially in Punjab, the present Punjab, 27% of the area is canal irrigated. That is almost 1/3 of the area is receiving irrigation through canals. And we find that it is not 8/2, it is 82%. Kindly read this as like this. That 82% of the population is the rural population in Punjab. And Haryana is no different. There is a slight variation. Haryana has industrially slightly developed in the recent almost 1.5 decades, and the rural population has slightly declined in Haryana. But predominantly, Haryana still is an agricultural state. So Haryana and Punjab, they share the common characteristics as far as this part is concerned. So you can see that the agriculture is the backbone of northern India. That almost is devoted to the agriculture production. Farmers are resorting to multiple cropping, that is crop rotation. They are using their plots more than once during a year, and they raise the crops, and 99% of their crop area is irrigated. And also, we find that the canal irrigation still owns, accounts for 1/3 of the total irrigation, and the rural population is predominantly, these are the rural states. Now, if we look at the contribution of the present day Punjab, we find that, Punjab has been, why we call this to, because Punjab is basically the agriculture produce exporting state, exporting to the rest of the states. So, it was in 1981-82, we find that almost 65% of the wheat produced was being procured by the government agencies, and these were being used in the other states. And rice, almost 70% of the rice was being procured from Punjab, and it was being used in other states. Now the share of in the central pool, if you look at the present Punjab, still Punjab predominantly contributes to the central kitty in terms of the food crops, that it is contributing almost 43% to that, and rice almost 23% to that. And look at the land area. Punjab owns only 2% of the total land area of the entire nation, of which 82% is under cultivation. The rest is under, either human habitation, or it is under industries, or maybe it is under the rural roads and others. So this is one part. And if you look at the major crops of Punjab, before coming to the environmental issues as such, now we find that these are the major food crops, major crops in Punjab, commercial and food crops both, because sugarcane is there. We find that the figures in brackets are, these are the areas in 1,000 hectares. The wheat and rice, if you find, paddy, they are the two major predominant crops. Wheat has almost 34.6 million hectares, whereas paddy has 33.33 million hectares. These are the interchangeable, because these are the crop rotation. This is the crop rotation. Wheat is sown after paddy, and then paddy, wheat, paddy, wheat. This is the crop cycle which is adopted in Punjab. And in certain pockets, in certain districts where the latter water is less, the water density is not available, or you can say that the water availability is less, or water deficit districts of Punjab. In those districts, the major crop is cotton, and it is followed by maize. And then, also in between the crops, the farmers, they grow vegetables and fruits. You will find that in certain districts of Punjab, especially the Sangrur and Bathinda belt and Firozpur in Punjab, the quinoa is very popular, and also in Hoshiarpur district. And then the vegetables, especially Ludhiana, Jalandhar, Kapurthala belt, this is very popular potatoes. So these are the major food crops which are grown there. And in certain pockets, the sugar cane is also grown, but sugar cane, its importance has gone down very, very significantly with the intensification of rice and wheat fields. Now, if you look at the role that the agriculture is playing in the Punjab economy, we find that the share of agriculture, domestic product, GSDP, is more than 17%, and the livestock, which is, you know, the animal husbandry and dairy farming taken together, even, you know, the other types of livestock, they contribute close to 9.5%, and the share of forestry is 2.33. So if we look at the total share, there may be other factors also which are which directly come under agriculture. The total share that agriculture contribute to the state domestic product is more than 29%. So agriculture, even after so many years of economic development, systematic development of India, remains the predominant sector in terms of its contribution to the state domestic product. And obviously the reasons are many, you know, even though we find that there is a service sector, which is the banking, which may be the state sector, which may have other financial services, you know, the fertilizers. If we look at those shares, I think close to 33% of the population is there. But in small scale industries, which are still, which you will find still are there, there are not many major industries in Punjab, but the medium and small scale industries, they have survived to a certain extent, even though they are not very labor intensive. But I think again, close to rather more than 34% of the population is in those is in the manufacturing or in the industrial sector of Punjab. So we find that you know, even though the service sector and industrial sectors have expanded after the adoption of economic planning, but it has not brought about any substantial change in terms of the occupational structure. If we consider Punjab as one of the developed states, and if we compare it with the other countries where you know, the economic development has taken at a very high speed, for instance, in the United States, in Japan, and in many European nations, the dependence of population on agriculture is less than 4%. It is close to, you know, 3.8. In some states, it is 4.5, but predominantly it is less than 4%. But Punjab state, despite being continuously, you know, having highest per capita GDP for many years continuously, did not, you know, lead to any substantial change in the occupational structure of Punjab. So we find that agriculture still remains the mainstay of the population. They still continue to drive their livelihood from the agriculture sector. And therefore, Punjab agriculture cannot be ignored. And it is not only an occupation, complete culture in agriculture. You know, it is sometimes we find that perhaps there is an option. We find that long history of the agriculture development. And we find, you see, this is not only a lopsided development, it has brought about other changes also, which we will see little later. And if you look at the Punjab in terms of the agro-based industries in Punjab, because Punjab agriculture has strong forward and backward linkages in many of the industries in Punjab. You know, even the wine industry in Punjab is heavily dependent on the agriculture. Tractors, which have the immediate market available in the northern India, many of these tractors, you know, the two major tractor producers, Sonalika tractors and, you know, the Swaraj tractors and Preet tractors, they are the major, you know, tractor industries. And we find that all of them, they have the units in Punjab. Sonalika is in Hoshiarpur district, Swaraj tractors is near Chandigarh in Mohali, and Preet tractors are again somewhere there in Punjab. and we find that all these tractors producing industries, they are adopting the latest technology, and they are perhaps producing some of the best tractors. This is what is, if you look at the awards which they get internationally, it is known from them. So Bajaj tractors are owned by Mahindra and Mahindra Group. Standard Corporation, not corporation, Standard Corporation, it produces the harvesting combines, which are used for harvesting the crops. You find that there are big machines during wheat and paddy harvesting seasons, and the Standard Corporation is the major harvesting combine producing industry in Punjab. And then we find that there are many food processing industries also. For instance, the Nestle, the PepsiCo, the Markfed, they have their units, Niger farm products. All those are the food-based industries which have a strong base in Punjab. And other, industries also. For instance, there are certain textiles in Amritsar. There are woolen industries in Punjab. They are also in a way dependent, and they have linkages with Punjab. So with Punjab agriculture. So this is what I mean to say is that Punjab agriculture is the nervous system of the entire Punjab economy. So no government in Punjab can afford to ignore, given its contribution, given its contribution to the state economy, and given its vibrant nature in terms of producing and meeting the national commitments. So therefore, Punjab agriculture is extremely well, and we will see its different the problems also. Why Punjab has succeeded in terms of agriculture development. We find that, as I mentioned in the beginning, that the colonialists, the British, they also invested in the canal irrigation, and we find that Bhakra Nangal project, which is the multi-purpose project in Punjab, it was initiated during the British time. But after independence, it was speeded up and it was completed in the year 1963, around the time when we were facing the food shortage. And the major purpose was, many areas in Punjab used to get a lot of floods during the rains. And it also used Punjab, the entire northern India used to face huge droughts during the non-rainy seasons. So the British and the subsequent, the Indian government, especially Pandit Nehru, they realized that it is very important that if we want to resettle the population, we need to have complete food security. And for food security, we need to have systematic, assured irrigation so that the crops of short maturing varieties can be grown. And Bhakra Nangal project, along with other small multi-purpose projects, in channelizing the rainwater, in storing the water in the huge reservoirs. I think Bhakra Nangal is still the largest, it still has the largest water reservation system. But yes, it has grown over a period of time, and it requires reinvestment, and the irrigation department and the engineering department there, they continuously work on that so that it does not pose any substantial danger in terms of degeneration. But if you look at the Bhakra Byas Management Board, they are incurring huge amounts of investment in terms of its maintenance. So, but this is the lifeline of the northern India, I must say that. And then we find that, this was the reason why, Punjab region or the northern Indian districts were chosen for the adoption of the Green Revolution, for the adoption of the new agricultural strategy. And what was that in that strategy? If we look at the socio-economic composition of the farmers, we find that majority of the farmers, they belong to the Jat community or the Jat community, and they were the land owning class. And also, they had huge experience in terms of growing agricultural crops, because even prior to independence, when the Western Punjab and now, in Pakistan, when the irrigation canals network was established, the farmers already had the experience of growing the food crops. All that was missing was that they were not using the short maturing or high yielding varieties, but they were using the local varieties, and they used to get huge production from those areas. And the agriculture was in a certain sense prior to independence, it was self-sustained. We had the food self-sufficiency. But after independence, as I mentioned, because of the increasing population, we face this issue of food shortage. And this is what some of the sociologists mention as the Malthusian bombs. Malthusian, gave the explanation that the population grows at the geometric progression, whereas the food availability grows with the arithmetic progression. As a result, the demand for food grows exponentially as the population grows over a period of time. And when we are unable to feed the growing population, the starvation takes place. And this is exactly what Professor P.C. Mahalanobis and his associates in the Planning Commission, they wanted to avoid. And as a result, the only reason sought was, the major reason why Punjab was chosen was this stark reality of food shortage and the growing population. So what was there in this Green Revolution technology? If we look at, at it a little seriously, we find that, of course, irrigation is the prerequisite for adoption of this. It was a package deal. It was the package of new agriculture strategy, which consisted of high-yielding varieties. High-yielding varieties means which have the prospect of raising the productivity per hectare. And we find that there were large, short maturing varieties, which we call as the Mexican varieties, which were imported from abroad and which were continuously sown in these irrigated areas. But along with that, they required, the supplements in terms of proteins and nutrients in the soil. As per the requirement of the new agricultural varieties. So, the chemicals, earlier we find that we used to have our own green manures or the local organic manure, but the local organic manure was not sufficient to maintain the soil fertility. So the supplements were required, which were supplemented in the form of the use of chemical fertilizers, especially potash, then the urea and DAP and urea. They became the major potash, nitrogen, and other things, ammonia, for instance. They became the major supplements for the soil fertility. Not that the organic manure, use of organic manure was stopped. Organic manure continued, but dependence on it was reduced to a very significant extent. And what we find is that, when the high-yielding varieties were being adopted in these irrigated districts of Punjab, we find that extension activities that is the demonstrative farms, were also, in order to educate the farmers in the adoption of these technologies, were also initiated. And if you look at the block development of this area, of these three states, Western Uttar Pradesh, Haryana and Punjab, we find that the block development along with this also took place systematically along with the adoption of the Green Revolution technology. Demonstrative farms were established where extension activities were being used in order to educate the farmers in the adoption of the modern practices. And also, along with this, we find that the agricultural machinery was used. The agricultural machinery in terms of tractors, diesel pumps, electric tubules, sprayers, harvesting machines. Harvesting machines, they came little later, but to begin with, these were the diesel pumps which were used to supplement the canal water. There are many districts in Punjab where, the groundwater was available. Canal water was restricted to few districts, but the groundwater in sufficient quantity was available. So, the government at that time, the public authorities, they encouraged the use of the groundwater resources through the extraction of diesel pumps and electric motors. And now we find that in Punjab and Haryana, especially in Punjab, farmers are getting free electricity for their electric motors. And this is one of the reasons, why we find many of the problems. You might be visualizing the problems that the Indian agriculture or the Punjab agriculture is facing. We will come to that, but at that time, we find that this was the need of the hour, and they were adopted in a very, very systematic manner. The machinery in various forms, and also, we find that it was not restricted to just the chemical fertilizers, the use of machinery, and the high yielding varieties. Rather, the farmers were also given easy access to the loans from the institutional finances like banks. Earlier, there were, the local RPRs or the Shahukars. But subsequently, we find that the cooperative society, cooperative movement in Punjab, rather in whole of India, was undertaken on a very, very systematic basis. And the farmers' cooperative societies, they provided short loans, crop loans to the farmers, which they used to take during the sowing season. And when the crops mature, they return those loans to the cooperative societies. And, many other farm inputs were also subsidized. For instance, the electricity is electricity which is used for the by the electric motors. There is a complete subsidy on that. The free electricity for 8 hours a day is provided to the farmers. And in other states also, and we find that this is it is not free, but it is highly subsidized in Haryana also. And that is one reason, the agriculture is still sustaining in Punjab. And other farm inputs, for instance, if you want to bring about any land leveling, you want to do some other things on the land, you could buy the land inputs for that. Forestation, that is Baghbani, or the forestation of the farms was also undertaken simultaneously, and subsidized plants, small plants were issued to the farmers so that they can supplement their income. Also, we find that along with this, the farmers used to get loans for जिसको हम तकावी लोन कहते हैं. तकावी loans means these are the seasonal loans. For instance, for buying the milk animals or the milch animals, for opening the dairy farming, you can take loans. All these were the complementary steps which were taken in this area to increase, on the one side, the farm production or the food products in general, and also to supplement the income of the farmers. So this is the background in which the Green Revolution has taken place, and we find that when we started this Green Revolution, in the early 60s or in the late 60s, even 71, 72, very less area of agricultural production was under high yielding varieties. But subsequently, if you look at the 80s, there is a huge intensification of high yielding varieties and the use of chemical fertilizers. Now, almost 95% of the crop area, gross crop area or net sown area, is under the use of high yielding varieties. And we find that the indigenous varieties of crops, they have almost vanished from the scenario, not only for wheat and rice, but for other crops also. So, it has also led to the use of pesticides and herbicides. We will come to this when we look at the consequences of this. We find that this was the package which was given to the farmers. It was both institutional and non-institutional reforms. I think immediately after independence, Punjab also had adopted land consolidation, and the land reforms were undertaken in a very, very systematic way. The land ceilings were imposed, and the surplus land, even though it was not much, but it was taken away from the farmers and it was distributed among the landless agricultural laborers. But the land was too less, this was given. So all these were the complementary factors. What I'm saying is that the agricultural reforms, the tenancy reforms were primarily of two types: the crop sharing and the contractual farming. These are the standard practices. What we find is that before the advent of the new agricultural strategy, the crop sharing, that is 50-50 between the cultivating households and between the landowning holders, 50% crop sharing was there, and it continued for a very long number of years. Even now we find that this practice in some of the villages is there. But over a period of time, this has taken the form of the contract farming, in the sense that the inward tenancy has taken place. That is, the farmers who are continuing in the agriculture field, they are taking land on rent from other farmers who are not directly cultivating, and they are paying them the fixed rent on land. So all these are the factors which are supplementing each other for the intensification, for adoption of this technology in Punjab. Okay, so this is the broad, the background. But what we find in this is that in this, even though Punjab has contributed hugely to the central pool, Punjab remains predominantly the agricultural state, at least in terms of employment, because still we find that very large number of households and the workers, they continue in the agriculture, but this has been done at a huge cost. We find that it has led to many problems. I will come to this, but let me share one or two more slides with you. So I will come to this particular slide a little later. This kind of adoption of this technology, the input intensive package, high yielding varieties, chemical fertilizers, along with the irrigation resources, expansion of electric tube wells, land consolidation, tenancy reforms, all these have led to a situation which were complementary to each other, but at the same time, it has resulted in the monoculture of Punjab agriculture. What is this monoculture? That it has led to a situation where the farmers are predominantly growing only two crops, and those are paddy and wheat. This is the crop cycle which we are adopting. And why, reason being, along with this adoption of the new agricultural technology, the government also set up, the state government as well as the central government, in order to meet their national commitments. They set up the agricultural marketing yards in Punjab, in Western Uttar Pradesh also, in Haryana, and that is one reason why the farmers are agitating now. They set up the APMCs, Agriculture Producer and Marketing Committees, which were and the state governments, through these APMCs, they procure the produce from the farms, from the farmers, on behalf of the central government, and the central government provides advance finance to the state government in the respective states to procure the agricultural produce from them. And we find that even though the minimum support price means the procurement price at which the crops are procured from the farmers. This minimum support price is calculated on different parameters. But currently, the minimum support price is calculated on C1 cost basis. Those of us who are aware of the cost of agricultural inputs, we know what is the C1 cost. Maybe it does not include the family labor. And, on this basis, the farmers are, the procurement prices are revised from time to time. And even though the central government announces it for 23 crops, but primarily there are two crops for which the farmers can sell to the government as much as they produce, as much as they wish. And those two crops are wheat and paddy. So the farmers, they get assured prices in terms of the MSP through the APMCs, and the mechanism is that the state governments, the state procurement agencies, they procure on behalf of the central government, which the center, and this procurement is used through the public distribution system to meet the requirements in the rest of the country. So this is how, the procurement and the public distribution system, they are interlinked, and they are completely dependent on agriculture. And even now we find that close to 15% of Indian population is still below poverty line. And even though we have surplus of food grains, surplus in terms of the purchasing power, not surplus in terms of the requirement. There is a malnutrition. There is a huge requirement of food grains to those households which cannot afford on their own. So government is providing them through the public distribution system, but still I think there are many weaknesses state-wise. Those should be plugged, and the procurement should be strengthened. So because of this intensification of the package inputs, along with the irrigation facilities which were already there, with the institutional support in the form of bank loans and others, consolidation and tenancy reforms, the farmers have got used to this wheat and tripe monoculture. And this is where perhaps we have not been able to look into the issues which the farmers are facing. Ecology, ecologically, this is unsustainable. Economically, this cropping pattern or the monoculture of wheat and rice, they are becoming unsustainable. Maybe, they are not viable also otherwise. So we have to find the ways for this. So what we find is that, this type of agriculture development which was concentrated in few districts where irrigation facilities were made available, and the farmers were given the responsibility to grow the crops in order to meet the food shortages, food scarcity in the nation, and they were encouraged to grow rice and wheat. We find that it has led to many adverse consequences. And the first consequence is the depleting water tables in northern India. We find that, and there is, the cumulative effect. Because larger and larger area, almost 95% of the area is under wheat and rice, which require very intensive use of water, and water is not available in that abundant quantity now, which it was during the 60s. During the 60s, there were canals and there was a problem of soil salinity. The water table used to go up near the canals, and diesel water traction, diesel pumps used to extract water from the ground, and as a result, it improved the soil fertility, and also, it made it possible to grow the crops there. But now, with the extensive adoption of rice and wheat, there is no other crop which is sown in Punjab. Predominantly these two crops, which are very water intensive, and as a consequence, we find that the water table has gone down very, very significantly. And what we find is that the farmers have to incur huge investments in terms of the agricultural machinery, in terms of the maintenance of their farms. And the input costs have also gone up very, very substantially. The profitability margins of the farmers are reducing. They are resorting to huge loans from the banks, which is, giving rise to the farm indebtedness. Farmers are not getting sufficient returns on their crops of returns on these two major crops, and as a consequence, their incomes are declining over a period of time. Punjab, which used to occupy the first position in terms of per capita income or the per capita state domestic product, has slid to, I think, the 15th position now. So you can see that this type of intensive use of chemical fertilizers, this heavy, diversion of crops from multiple, from many crops to the two crops or the monoculture of wheat and rice has, led to huge indebtedness on the part of the farmers. And you will find there are many huge consequences. Farmers are committing suicide. Many of them, they are unable to return loans. And the declining water tables, they also necessitate that we dug deep into the soil in order to put the electric motor. Earlier we used to, I remember my own childhood, roughly 30 years back when I was in the village, 35 years, 40 years. We used to have electric motor of 3 horsepower. Now we are, in order to extract the same quantity of water, now we are using 15 horsepower motor. So the electric consumption has gone up for the same amount of water, for the same acreage under cultivation, almost 5 times. And there is an electric subsidy, huge complete subsidy on electricity as far as the farming part is concerned. That is how the farmers are surviving. Otherwise, if they have to pay for 15 horsepowers per month, I think the electricity consumption charges would be almost 5,000 to 6,000, depending upon which electric pump you are using. So if we add up this cost for the farmers, their profitability level will still go down, and the indebtedness, they will not be able to return loans to the institutional sources of finance, and the farm indebtedness will grow further. Now, the present Punjab government, they came back to occupy the position Captain Amrinder Singh on this promise that they will completely, refund the farmers' loans, and the amount of the loans were very, very huge, 96,000 crores, which no state government can do. So as a consequence, we find that the farmers' income, because of this type of technology, because of this type of adoption, has led to the huge rural indebtedness. And as I have already said that the main occupation as far as working population is concerned, still we do not find much people shifting from agriculture. There are, of course, migration from agriculture, and this migration is not getting reflected in terms of industrial employment. Many people are going abroad in search of perhaps the greener pastures or maybe the higher levels of income. And that gap is being filled by the labor from the eastern UP and Bihar. And you will find that Punjab agriculture is very, very intensively dependent upon the agricultural labor from Bihar and eastern UP. And this has also, resulted in social fragmentation. The indebtedness of the farmers, replacement of the agricultural labor by the technology, has also led to the use of drugs in Punjab. You will find that many young people are, they started consuming. Perhaps now, because of the concerted efforts of the state government, it has been curbed to some extent, it has been brought under control to some extent, but still, many people are using drugs, and there is a drug abuse at a very, very large scale. So you can see that if we look at the socio-economic parameters of the Punjab economy, there is a huge depression in terms of declining farms' income, increasing indebtedness of the farmers, and there are hardly, other types of industrial expansion in Punjab, and there is increasing use of drugs in Punjab, and this has brought, the Punjab agriculture or Punjab economy to the 15th position in India. Now, reasons, of course, when we come to the reasons of this, I have mentioned this particular slide, but let me go to this. We find that, as I mentioned, that the unregulated and subsidized exploitation of the groundwater has led to a serious ecological crisis for the local agrarian economy. And I will come to, the other statistics also, but here we find that, the fresh water use, almost 83% of the fresh water is being used for the agricultural purposes. And very less is being made available for drinking water. You often find, even in Punjab, the drinking water, the water table, because the water table has gone down and the use of pesticides has contaminated the upper layers of the soil. And whenever there is a rain and penetration of the surface water into the groundwater, it makes it unfit for human consumption. So the drinking water goes, we have to dig deep hand pumps, the electric motors in order to extract potable water which is fit for human consumption. So this is a very serious situation, and this is primarily because of the subsidized exploitation. Because we are providing free subsidy, we are resorting to these two crops. I think there has to be a rational use. We have to find some rationalization for this. And since the input costs are increasing, the farm yields or the MSP is not, the value of the yields is not growing proportionately. And consequence, we find that very large number of farmers are committing suicide. This is not only confined to Punjab. Many people, you might have noticed that even in Maharashtra, the Bhadra, region of Maharashtra, Malwa region in Punjab, many farmers are facing this situation, and the growing incidence of death by suicide and increasing desperation to emigrate for a better future among the rural population youth are indicative of the severe stress that the cultivating households experience today. These are the findings of the sociological study done by Professor S.S. Jodhka, who is a professor in the Jawaharlal Nehru University. He did survey, and he did an extensive literature survey also, in which these findings are mentioned. So I thought I must share this with you in order to understand this. Now, in order to understand the impact, especially when we look at the focused area of the impact of green revolution or the consequences of green revolution, we find that what is the scenario agricultural development vis-a-vis environment? First of all, we find that because of the excessive, the short maturing varieties, the high yielding varieties are short maturing in the sense that they require lesser amount of time to mature. That is why, the multiple cropping is possible. These, the excessive use of fertilizers with the adoption of the high yielding varieties, they have led to the pest growth. And in order to control the pest, we have to use the pesticides. There are many unrequired weeds which grow in the crops, and we use the weedicides, which are also, the chemicals, and they are of highly toxic nature. They contaminate the upper layers of the soil, and they destroy the fertility of the soil tremendously. And when we are using in quick succession, when we are raising crops in quick succession, the soil fertility also suffers because we do not supplement the soil nutrients to the extent required. Because sometimes, the natural process is also required as it used to be earlier. During the organic farming times, the soil used to, there was one crop which is grown on one field. For the next season, that plot was left vacant so that it regains its soil fertility. But it is not done so now because successive crops are grown over there. And as a consequence, there are many pests, there are many weeds which grow. And in order to avoid those, and in order to ensure the productivity of the crops, we use heavy amounts of pests and weeds, weedicides, pesticides and weedicides, which lead to many other problems. Water consumption, for instance, as I said, that when we are using water, fresh water, at such an extensive level, then the water consumption for human consumption, the amount left is very less. And you will often find Delhiites crying and blaming Haryana and Punjab for the shortage of water in Delhi. And this is more so in the in the central plateau of India, where there are hardly any rivers. There are only seasonal rivers, and the people, they are dependent extremely on rains. And in the wake of the changing climatic zones, in the wake of changing climate, we find that the water tanks are not refurbished time and again, and there is very less water available for even human consumption. Air pollution. This is again a very severe problem of agriculture. When the agricultural residues are burned, in wheat and rice straw, we burn. Earlier, we used to burn. It is only during the last 2 years that the government has taken very stringent steps to check the burning of agricultural residues, crop residue. But it is burned still. It is not completely stopped. So the use of chemicals and the burning of these crop residue, they contaminate the air also, and we find that the air quality index in many northern cities goes down to severe level. And people use masks, people use air purifiers in their purifiers in their houses, and it becomes very difficult to breathe here. And Delhi, rather, some of the northern cities in India, I think the major cities in India, they become completely unhealthy, and they become perhaps the most polluted cities in the world. And agriculture does contribute to that. It is not only the agriculture. Agriculture is not the only culprit. The vehicular pollution, the industrial pollution, all these, they contribute to the same phenomenon, but agriculture does affect them very, very significantly. We have also seen, as a consequence of the adoption of the high-yielding varieties, the indigenous crops, the seeds of the indigenous crops, they have become almost extinct. They are not available. They are no more available. जिसको हम देसी वैरायटीज कहते हैं सीड्स की, चाहे वो वेजिटेबल्स की हैं, cotton or the food crops, they are getting extinct from the sea. Impact on human health. We find that our food consumption pattern has also changed. Earlier, I do not know that you can ask your parents. They used to eat a lot of millets and maize and bajra. But nowadays we are primarily eating wheat and rice, which lead to many other, because of the chemicals, because they have been grown with chemicals, they lead to many other difficulties. For instance, the diabetes is one reason why the short maturing varieties and rice, continuous consumption of these two crops, they can lead to diabetes. There are very large number of studies to this extent. But if we continue to consume, or if we supplement our dietary habits with the other food grains, for instance, the millets, the vegetables, the salads and others, we can avoid many of the modern day difficulties. And that is why, some of the people, they prefer the organic food rather than, the chemically grown crops. Health-related impacts. Now, I can, mention many health-related impacts in this particular. Just let me see this. Health-related impacts, you see in Punjab, we find that after the adoption of the new agricultural strategy or the green revolution technology, the incidence of cancer has grown up very, very significantly. there are, there are many studies in Punjab. Two studies are done by, one the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, and one was done by the postgraduate Jawaharlal Postgraduate Institute of Medical Sciences, Chandigarh. And they have used the time series data, and they have established that this type of agricultural development and the industrial development also, which has accompanied in certain pockets of Punjab and Haryana, they have led to huge incidents of deterioration in the health indicators of many individuals. I can, there is a, I can cite one study, there is a one district in Punjab, which is Bathinda, and, there is a train which we call as the cancer train, which goes to, which goes to Rajasthan, Delhi. And because the medical facilities were also not available, those medical facilities for cancer patients were available in Rajasthan. So Delhi, the patients used to go, and the next set of patients will come back. So this, the train assumed this dubious distinction of cancer train. Now the Punjab government has set up, along with the help provided by the central government, the medical aid provided by the central government, the AIIMS at Bathinda also, and that trend has been curtailed to some extent. But I think the kidney-related issues, the farmers themselves are facing many skin-related issues. Their eyes, number of times they are affected, and they do not even know that their eyesight is getting weak. They do not even know that their kidneys are being affected, because they resort to sprayers of these pesticides continuously, and unintentionally they consume huge amounts of these pesticides, and as a consequence, it affects their health very, very significantly. We also know that there is a study done of two districts in Punjab, one again in Bathinda district and one in Ropar. There is a place called Talwandi Sabu, which is associated with the 10th Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Near that, almost 350,000 cases were considered. Cases means the individuals. And also in the Ropar districts, I think 2 lakh cases were considered, 1,80,000 something in the Ropar district. And what we find is that cases and the controls, cases are means the people who are affected with these diseases, and the control cases are those cases which do not have any immediate symptom, but which may have, people may not be aware that they are suffering from these diseases. And we have find that over a period of time, this incidence of the breast cancer, the diabetes, the kidneys, the effect on eyes, and the skin ailments has grown with the over a period of time, as the agricultural production per hectare has also grown. And why these two districts were chosen? One district was using the canal irrigation, especially Talwandi Sabu area. It uses the canal irrigation predominantly, whereas in Ropar it is the tubal irrigation, electric tubals or the diesel pumps. And we find in both the cases, the incidence of, because they use pesticides, they use high yielding varieties, they use chemical fertilizers very extensively. And we find that the incidence of these diseases is growing over a period of time. These were and proportionately, the expenditure on public health has not taken place. In Punjab, this is a tragedy. Even though the expenditure on agriculture has grown up, but the expenditure on public health and education has rather come down in terms of percentage. perhaps it is not the priority of the state government. Now, if you want the agriculture to be successful, then it has to have, in order to avoid the adverse socio-economic impacts of this type of agricultural development, the government has to invest in health and education, especially in the public health. Primary healthcare centers have been set up, but there are hardly any doctors. And even if the doctors and nurses are available, the Gram Seviks have been appointed. The primary health center people are there, but medicines are completely missing. Same is the case in the animal health. We do not find that the veterinary care has gone up. Rather, the veterinary care has come down very, very soon. So all this has been accompanying the adoption of the green revolution technology, which we find is there. So I think I have discussed primarily the background, the historical background in which Punjab was adopted as a state for adoption of new agriculture strategy or the green revolution. We find that very intensive package of chemical fertilizers, agricultural machinery, high yielding varieties were adopted, and along with this, many institutional measures were also taken in terms of land reforms, tenancy reforms, and consolidation of the land holdings, or the agricultural holdings, and also the sources of institutional finance were made available to the farmers. And as a consequence, while Punjab has shouldered the responsibility of the nation in terms of ensuring food security, for which it was given the responsibility for the production of rice and wheat, but this has been done at a tremendous cost. And what is that cost? The cost is that it has led to a monoculture. It has led to huge environmental impact in terms of air pollution, depleting water resources, and also surface soil contamination, which requires huge investments if we want to reverse this. And also, this agricultural development has impacted the human consumption patterns and ultimately the health of the agricultural farmers, the health of the people living in these states, the health of the people living in these agricultural intensive districts, where the agriculture, the technology intensive districts where technology has been adopted at a much larger scale. So there are positive and there are negative sides also. So this is the scenario, and let us look at the remedies which we can think of. This is the last part of my presentation, which after that we can discuss the questions related to that. What we find is that, if we want to reverse this impact, we have seen that the rice and cropping pattern has to be changed. We need to break this monoculture of crop rotation of wheat and rice. And for that, the crop diversification is required. That is, we need to encourage the farmers to go alternative crops. You may ask the question, why the farmers are not doing alternative crops? As we discussed, the MSP is available only in two crops, and that is wheat and rice, at which the government assures the complete procurement. If we really want that this wheat and rice overproduction has to be curtailed, we need to ensure that the MSP is extended to other crops, not merely announced, but the crops should be procured. The farmers should be educated. There has to be extension activities in other crops also. There are huge potentialities, but the farmers are not sure. You know, whenever they, for instance, in animal dairy, quite often you will find that you know, the dairying is also a success. Like in Anand in Gujarat, we find that you know, Aman Milk, it was a cooperative movement and it succeeded very significant. Professor Kurian, under the guidance of Mahatma Gandhi, undertook this cooperative milk movement, and it led to the White Revolution. But in Punjab, you know, the animal husbandry is there, the animal rearing is there, the dairy farming is there, but there is no assured procurement of milk. In the rest of the country, in the cities, for instance, we are getting contaminated milk. So the supply chain has to be strengthened. It has to be, the marketing has to be done on a very, very systematic basis. Only then, and if we ensure the farmers that they will be irrespective of the production, if they are assured some minimum return, they will obviously go to the alternative crops. But this alternative crops should provide them little higher profits than rice and wheat. Only then, you know, if the opportunity cost is less, only then they will go to the other crops. If the opportunity cost is going to be higher in other crops, or if the cost of cultivation or the level of profitability in alternative crops is less, then the farmers will have no incentive to adopt to other methods. So I think this process has to, some mechanism, some institutional arrangements have to be done for this. Soil and water conservation, these are very important. As I said, in this part, 82% of fresh water is used for, even in the rest of the nation, is used for crop cultivation. Very less is available for human consumption. And we find in the cities, there is a shortage of drinking water. We need to have proper integration of the cropping pattern. We have to evolve a strategy through which, you know, the water consumption has to be ensured. And then this cannot be done unless and until we have the water conservation technique. Water harvesting, storage of water in tanks, and to stop the runoffs, to collect the rainwater and preserve it properly. These are some of the strategies which are adopted the world over. We have to follow those technologies. Soil health. Excessive use of chemicals has destroyed the soil stability. I don't think, you know, if any crop, other crop is sown, it will survive, because the weed growth, the pests, they do not allow other crops to grow. We have tried, in fact, in Punjab that when, you know, when the rice is grown, and if on smaller plots, the other crops are grown, the pests from the rice, they attack those crops and they eat that crop away. You might have read in the newspapers that the whitefly in Punjab and Haryana, the pest attack on the cotton crops is huge, and the farmers, they find it a complete loss when their crops are destroyed. So I think in order to maintain the soil fertility, in order to keep the nutrients level at appropriate level, we need to have crop rotations of different crops, and we also need to have some sort of rotation where the certain, you know, in rotation, certain pockets of land are left fallow. They are left uncultivated for a year or so that they regain their fertility. Dairy development. you know, this is a very important aspect. It does not only supplement the agricultural income, it rather strengthens our socio-economic base, our human relations. You know, the females in the households, they get easy access to the daily routine requirements, their cash requirements, if the dairy development is there, because this gives you the cash immediately. Not only fulfills your own nutritional requirements, your own household requirements, healthy animals should be provided and veterinary centers should be developed, and the dairy farming, the crop used as a fodder for them. Sometimes we fail to understand why, you know, the animal, why the dairy farming has not expanded in India. We find that India is having the largest animal population in the world, but majority of these animals are deceased. They are not fit for. They're not high yielding. They do not give adequate quantity of milk. So we need to have these facts in mind. Milk marketing and processing, and this is true for the agricultural crops also, as I mentioned, that if we want to have the alternative crops, if we want that, you know, we, depending upon the different agroclimatic zones, we need to strengthen. You know, recently we are spending a lot of foreign exchange on edible oils. India, being predominantly agriculture, is procuring huge amounts of edible oils. I do not know why cannot we grow here. We need to identify our different agroclimatic zones where these crops can be grown. Some in the rainfall, supplemented through artificial irrigation or the drip irrigation, and also partially through the changing the cropping pattern in the agriculturally technologically intensive states. We can do that. And milk marketing and processing again is very important. We find that these chocolates and others, the milk products of Sweden, are so popular. Why India can't do it? Fish farming, piggery, all these are the alternative methods through which we can supplement the income of the farmers in a very, very systematic way. And also we can bring about technological improvement in agriculture, which can prove to be sustainable and which can become the life support system for a larger chunk of population. We need not leave the agriculture base. All that is required is that it requires a systematic agricultural development in India, for which the policies are required. I will end my discussion here, and now I will, if you wish, you can ask me any questions. Professor Kushwaha.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My discussion and my presentation is over, and I'm open to any discussions for this.
I have two questions. Ask all the time or to answer one by one?
Yes, Simed. তোমার কোশ্চেন শোনা যাচ্ছে না হিমাদ্রিজা, রিপিট করো, প্লিজ রিপিট.
You can
hello sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yes, I have questions. Could some of already in part that second.
Ms. Chakraborty, your voice is not properly audible. You can put your question in the chat box. There is no problem.
Okay, sir.
I can read the question from that and then answer.
Any other participant in between that?
Sir, I have a question, sir. Now we have seen that the recent farmer protest due to the introduction of new policy in new agricultural policy. So there was a much discussion and debate regarding the bad impact of this government policy. So, sir, my question is, could you please highlight some advantage of these policies, if possible, sir? Is there any advantage of this policy for which the farmer could be benefited? Is there any angle?